Hello and welcome back to FM Scout. My name is Rhys, and coming up on today's show, we've got 10 top tips for you for day one in Football Manager 2022. So don't forget to hit like if you enjoy the video, hit subscribe if you are new. Feel free to head on over to my Football Manager channel that is called FM Wonderkids, link in the description. Let me show you tip number one. So it's called tips for day number one, but this one's actually a tip for day number 0, right? You don't want to be seeing this instead of this. So we've done a whole video on how to get the real name fixes into your Football Manager 2022 life. I will link that above, but it really does enhance your Football Manager experience. Real names, real badges, real logos, real player faces. I advise getting all of that done on day 0. Tip number 2 is staff responsibilities, right? Click on the staff tab and then go to responsibilities at the top. You'll see this quite confusing screen come up with all the staff responsibilities, scouting responsibilities, etc. Let me just talk you through some of the things that I would be making sure that I was responsible for in my saves, and some of the things that I'd be making sure that I definitely wasn't responsible for in my saves. It can save you a lot of headaches and a lot of time ultimately in the game. But first off, you need to get off this overview screen, skip the board and go straight down to staff. Now you can see here that I am managing the team selection for the first team, so that's great, happy days. I've got an under 23 manager and an under 18s manager. Perfect. I'm in charge of hiring and firing a technical director here at Chelsea, which I mean is fine. I could delegate that out to the chairman, for example. First team staff recruitment I would handle, and I would implore you to handle it as well. That's coming a little bit later. I would also take control of hiring and firing the under 23s coaching staff, because I think that's important. And after looking at the rest of these responsibilities, I can see I'm ready to move on to the next one, which is transfers and contracts. Personally, I'd like to make sure I was responsible for all of these things, and a quick scroll through shows that by default I am. That's absolutely perfect. I want to be handling all the transfers and the contract negotiations myself. I don't want to be wasting money on players' wages, on players' transfer fees, on agents' fees, etc. Full control, please. Thank you very much. Same with contracts and offer to clubs, just can be left as it is. Media, I would put all of my media responsibilities to my assistant manager. It's not a part of the game I personally enjoy. You may love it. You may love getting the questions and answering the questions. That's absolutely fine. Make sure you do take control of these. If that's a part of the game you enjoy, if you want to save a little bit of time, trust me, it's nice not to do press conferences. I generally like to delegate out team training, but take control of individual training. So you can see here, you're kind of personalizing the game. You're getting rid of parts of the game that you don't want to deal with, and you're just taking on the jobs that you enjoy doing essentially, or the jobs that you want to be in your Football Manager 2022 game. A couple more of the most important ones, especially on day one, is to make sure your assistant manager leads friendly matches. Now, you may say to me that you want to take friendly matches, and that's absolutely fine. Friendly matches could be a really important part for you to maybe build your tactics or see your players in action and determine which players you want and which players you don't want. That's absolutely fine. For me, I find friendlies a bit of a waste of time. They're just a kind of pre-season fitness getter for my team. The next tip is to sort out your coaches and your staff. It's always one of the first things, if not the first thing I do in any Football Manager game, is to make sure I've got the best coaching setup possible for my club. Personally, to do that, I navigate straight to the training tab on the left and go to coaches to see how competent my coaches are at their individual disciplines and where I need to beef it up to get the best out of my players, essentially. I'll go to edit coach assignments on the top right here, and I will ask my assistant to assign all. Now, normally you will have like quite a decent set of attributes yourself, which is great, and you'll be able to get some stars onto a discipline that you are trained up in. But you can see here I've got a couple of 3 stars. I got quite a lot of 3 stars here, when really a team like Chelsea here wants 4 stars, right? So that means going shopping for some coaches. So I'd go back to the staff tab on the left, go to staff search up the top, and then add a filter. Now, the 3 holy attributes you want are determination, motivation, and level of discipline, right? That's going to form the backbone of your coaching team normally. For this particular filter, I'm going to show you an assistant manager search, right? So I'm going to want an assistant manager who's also going to be competent at coaching my team. For that, I'll add 2 more disciplines, which are judging player potential and judging player ability. I usually require my assistant manager to have at least 15 on each of these. Obviously, that's not going to be realistic for like a lower league save, but this is what we're looking at here. Now 15 across the board, click OK, and we can see straight away, bang, it has filtered it out for us. I usually click on the include button here to include staff from my own club, just so I don't like overlook people who are already in my club and don't overlook them for roles which they could be really suitable for. Now you can see that that filter has thrown up quite a lot of results, right? So I could refine that a little bit more just by pushing all these attributes up one by going back to the filter and clicking the plus button here. Once that goes up to 16, I can see just to the left here, we still got about 10 people in the frame for this assistant manager role, right? So I'll click it up one again, and that has left us with 4 people that could be suitable for this role. Just to click on one of them randomly, and wow, this guy's insane. John Pooley. I mean, this is a totally unrealistic staff member to be showing you as an example. Judging player potential 20, judging player ability 20, people management. I mean, he's just the perfect staff member. So I'll click off him because maybe you won't be able to find someone like that for your save. But this guy here is very good, right? He's a scout, a coach, a director of football, an assistant manager. He's got judging player ability, judging player potential. He's got great mentors. If I click on the coaching tab here, we can see that he's also great tactically and at defending and working with youngsters. So he's going to be able to fulfill a decent star rating over on my staff training tab, right? So he's going to get an offer, easy peasy. Click on contract, approach to sign. Change the job role because I don't want him as a scout. I want him as an assistant manager. Bump up the salary a touch just to make sure he accepts it, and then click suggest terms. Straight away he comes back with he wants a lot more money. Now money isn't an issue here at Chelsea, so I'll give him a little bit more just to make sure he accepts it, and bang, he has accepted the role. I would repeat this process until I was happy that every single discipline in my coaching assignments was covered as best as possible, right? Smaller clubs won't be able to employ as many coaches, but clubs here like Chelsea will be able to employ quite a lot. Now, it does show you here on the staff page how many staff members you're allowed in a specific area of your squad, but it's really important to remember that at the start of the game, as you bring new staff members in, you can mutually terminate the contracts of other staff members. Let me show you what that looks like. If I just click on this guy here, Hilario, the goalkeeping coach, a bit of a legend at Chelsea himself, to be honest. But if I click on his contract and then just go to mutual termination, that will go through every single time, as far as I know, and always has done on Football Manager. Just click on my inbox to make sure that has gone through, and you can see here Hilario agrees to contract termination. These staff members won't agree every time to mutual termination of their contract during Football Manager, but at the start of the game they will, or at least they're more likely to. As far as I know, it happens every single time. They will always accept, right? Tip number 4 is tactics. Now, you might not know what kind of tactical style you want to play. You might have a specific tactic that you want to play, or you might be trying to build your own tactics, right? And I'm sure there are a lot of different kind of Football Manager players out there watching this video. So what I suggest is loading in 3 separate ones, right? Here I'm just going to go with a tiki-taka basic. We're going to go tiki-taka, choose formation, and then go 4-2-3-1 wide, okay? Now that's a positive mentality, so I'll also create maybe a counter-attacking one as well, so a wing play tactic, choose formation. Again, I'll try and keep the formations relatively similar, so if I have to change tactics in game, there's not too many personnel changes that need to happen. And for this mentality, I'll go cautious, and it can kind of be my counter-attacking tactic. Tactic number 3, I'll go for a park the bus tactic, right? It's not something I normally use, but depending on where you're playing your football, you might want one of these tactics, maybe just to like kill a game off, right? So again, we'll just go for similar formations again, so personnel changes don't have to happen, right? Now, I'm not saying have these tactics or use these tactics, but what I am saying is have an idea of what tactics you want to use and just make sure you load them in straight away, because that will build this thing here, which is familiarity with your tactical setup. You can always change them at a later date, build a new tactic, load a new tactic, change the way you want to play, change your philosophy. But having them loaded in day 1 is going to help, right? And if you want to change them, of course you can change them. If there's a specific tactic you want to use, or if you know that you don't want to build your own tactic, I'd suggest heading on over to the FMSCOUT website and downloading one of the tactics, or 2 of the tactics, or even 3 of the tactics that have worked really well. Maybe try and choose 3 different mentalities and load them into each slot here. That will help your team, again, gain familiarity with that tactic before your first game of the season. You can see here that our familiarity with this tactic is awkward across the board, but look at the date here. It's the 5th of July 2021, and if we look at our schedule, we've got a long time to work on that tactic before our first game on the 11th of the 8th against Villarreal, our first competitive game anyway. I mean, the Super Cup, is it a competitive game? Of course it is. Tip number 5 is to assess your squad. Now, of course, everybody does this, right? This is just natural. Everyone's going to come in and assess their squad, but we couldn't leave it out of the video, which is like 10 things to do on day 1. Of course, you've got to assess your squad on day 1, right? Star ratings here are really good. They'll give you specific kind of indication as to how good your players are for your specific team. But do bear in mind that they are judged by a person and human error could happen. This is an overall report from Zoltlo, my assistant manager, and I hope I pronounced that correct. Now, Zoltlo may not be the best at judging player potential and judging player ability. So that, again, is why it is key, as we spoke about earlier, that my assistant managers have very good attributes in terms of judging player potential and judging player ability. To get in there, assess your squad. Any dead wood, put them on the transfer list, maybe put them on the unwanted list, which is as easy as right-clicking, going down to add to unwanted list. You can tell your team that you only want to sell them for their value, or sell them for an asking price, sell them for half of their value, etc., etc., right? Another great screen to use when assessing your squad is the squad depth screen here at the top of your screen. Now here you'll see a list of your squad's players in your formation, best to worst, okay? So you can see I've got a few players here who are decent strikers, Romelu Lukaku being the best. Centre midfield is pretty stacked with quality. Wingers, only 3 stars, potentially could be improved. As well as right back, interestingly, where, to be fair, I wouldn't be wanting to replace Rhys James myself. Again, this is just the opinion of one man, my assistant manager, but here on this screen you can very easily change who you would like to judge your squad depth. So if you have a specific staff member that you know has got very, very good judging player ability or judging player potential attributes, that's the one you want. The next tip is scouting. Once you've assessed your squad and you've transfer listed the players that you don't want in your squad, you need to go out and try and find some new ones, right? Now we've got a ton of videos on the channel with players that you might want to sign on them, like wonderkids under £500,000 and top wonderkids under 30 million and stuff like that. So if you wanted to do your scouting in that way via YouTube or whatever, that's an excellent way to do it. There's loads of resources on the internet. You can also do it in game, obviously. If you're a purist, make sure to read the tool tips here or the tutorials, because they are very, very good. I personally don't use the in-game scouting tools, so I'm not going to sit here and give you a tutorial because I'm not an expert on it, but I will give you a couple of tips, right? So here on the player search screen, for example, do make sure that your recruitment package goes up to the full world, or to however high you can get it in your budget, right? Teams like Chelsea and like big teams, of course you can afford to get the world package, and that will increase the number of players that you can see on your search screen. It'll cost you a little bit extra money. You then have your assignments tab where you can see your scouts and their assignments and change scout priorities, etc. Shortlists are an absolutely fantastic way of focusing on players that you want from certain positions, etc. You can download these from the internet. You can make your own shortlist. It's a really handy tool to use. You can save them, load them up, etc. But it's really key to get your scout ball rolling on day 1, right? You don't want to be stuck on deadline day making bad decisions and signing players that don't really fit into what you want in your team because you haven't done your due diligence, right? You haven't done your scouting from day one. Next up is training. Now, I'm not going to give you an in-depth guide into training in this video because that is a whole other video in itself, but do make sure that you hit this tab on day one. You've got calendars, schedules. You can leave it all to your assistant if you want. You've got mentor in here, which again, really quick fix is just to ask your assistant to sort these groups out for you. Bang, easy as that. Your mentoring groups are done. Individual training, I think, is quite important. If you know what you want from your player, for example, if I wanted Rhys James here to be better at crossing, I would just put additional focus on crossing, for example, and maybe put his intensity up a little bit higher if he wasn't at risk of injury, that is. He's actually on holiday right now, so I'll go down to Alonso instead, and I'll put his focus on crossing, put his intensity up to double intensity, and bosh, we are good to go. If I wanted to train him in attacking midfield left, I could do that also with an attack duty. Happy days. It is possible to train players to become natural in certain positions. Not every player will become natural in every certain position, but it does happen, and when it happens, it's one of the most satisfying things in the world, trust me. So if you want to retrain a player, if you spot that he's got the right attributes to play a certain role or a certain position, give it a go, and it can be a very satisfying way to play the game. Next up, contracts, right? You've assessed your squad, you know the players you want and you know the players you don't want. Have a little look at their contracts. Go to your squad screen, go to contracts view, and see what's going on. You always want to, in my view, sort by expiry time. And you can see here, the year is the 5th of January 2021, and I've got quite a few players' contracts expiring in 2022. And for example, if one of these players who was like a star player, which I knew I did not want to leave under any circumstances, I'd go straight in and I'd offer this player a new contract. Check the promises, finalize them, hit negotiate contract, give the guy whatever he wants. I'm kidding, don't give him whatever he wants. Make sure you check the fine prints, finalize the deal, and then bosh, you've got yourself the player that you want in your team for a long time, tied down to a long contract. All these players here that expire in 2022, in 6 months time, they are at risk of being able to talk to other clubs, right? If the contract runs down totally, they leave your club for absolutely free. But 6 months before that, depending on where they're playing the football or where the suiting club is playing the football, etc., they'll be able to negotiate to leave for free to other clubs. So get these players tied down unless you just want them out the door. Beware the release clause though. If a player wants to put a release clause into their contract, it's not always a good thing for you, the club. Try and negotiate it out of their contract if possible. I think it's a great idea. Also, agent fees. No one wants to be paying high agent fees, right? That's something I always try and minimize right down to as small as possible, as well as loyalty bonus as well. 3.7 million, oof, that's a lot of money. Next tip, friendlies. You can get your assistant manager to arrange friendlies, or you can do them yourself. If your club hasn't got enough friendlies in the calendar, then your team just aren't going to be able to get match fit before the start of the season, right? You can see here there's a big gap between the 20th of the 7th and the 11th of the 8th. That's like 20 days, so I definitely want to make sure there's a friendly in between that. So I just hit the arrange friendly button and you can go from there. Arranging friendlies can be a really cool way of making a little bit of money. You can see here if I'm arranging a friendly between Chelsea and Arsenal away from home, we'll kind of break even. But if I change that to a home game, we'll make a little bit of money from that. Next tip for you on day one is to sort out your preferences. Hit the FM button at the top of your screen here, then go down to preferences, select the auto save type that you want. That's quite important. You can have 10 file, 5 file, or 3 file rolling auto saves, which I would recommend. 5 years is quite a long time. Probably do it maybe monthly, 3 months, or every fortnight. That's probably the only thing I would recommend doing day one in terms of preferences. There are other things you can do. Change the size of the text on the image. For example, you can see here I've got it on 125% just to make it a little bit clearer for you guys watching. I know some of the Football Manager channels, you can be a head in the corner and then some really small text on the other side of the screen, for example. So I try and zoom in when I'm doing the videos. Change your currency to whatever currency you want. I always like to go to formats to change my height, weight, and short distances to feet, stone, and yards. And some people think I'm a bit weird for doing that, but that's what I'm used to. Those are some of the things to think about in day 1 of Football Manager 2022. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe if you are new. If you'd like to check out my channel, it's called FM Wonderkids. We talk about Wonder Kids and stuff like that. That is linked up there. Thanks for watching again. See you soon.